and welcome all to this episode of Freedom Hub's Working Group. I'm your host, Jeff Cantor, along with my co-host, Charles Froman. We are sponsored by a number of really interesting companies, and needless to say, we are the Disruptors intersection, so we appreciate you being here to help try to make a few things change. We are recording all these for posterity and kind of show you how we now set up a new way for you to access all this stuff. As I said, we've got some great sponsors, but before we even talk about that for a minute, let's take a little review here. We do have our own LinkedIn group, so please participate and become a member. From now on, we've made a specialized new website with a variety of things on here of consequence. And when you come to the home page, and it's mphealthwealthfreedom.com, or just the acronym mphwf.com. But when you hover over home, there's two key things going on here. One, you want to come to the third part of the drop that says information events. So that's kind of like the coordinating page for all of what's happening here today. We're showing that we've got 2 and now 3 video series. And here we are at this one today at 4 o'clock on the left, and then the one tonight coming up. And then also the third one here, which I just was describing. Here's how you can participate in the ones coming up, so you'll see who's coming. And then also here are the links to all of the videos. So any video that we record on a Wednesday is posted by Sunday at the latest. So come Monday morning, you can go back to this page and click on any of these links. You'll be able to catch the videos. Here's an example. There's the BitChute page. Here's the stuff from Brighteon. And then most importantly, when you're at that home page and then you hover, I should say, over the continuing the conversation, this is the neatest part of what we're doing. Now we want to be able to continue on with all of the people we've met with, because needless to say, just because we had a talk today doesn't mean whatever they're talking about is one and done. There's things that need to be dealt with and activities to engage and to participate in and drive it forward. So that's a big part of it. And then, of course, as I said, we've got some great sponsors, and here on our marketplace page here, you'll see we've got some really fantastic stuff. Depending on your persuasion, here are the cards you can order to make sure I don't have to wear a mask or receive a vaccine against my wishes. And very excitingly here from Nutrition, we got some fantastic new products. This is a lozenge that is able to FDA disclosure, help certain things we're not allowed to mention. And then also our new special protein, which is going to be renamed. This is a substitute for eating food. So if you can't eat for the day, you can just take these, and that's the equivalent of eating food for the day. So when everybody's looking for that pill, that I can just eat a pill, here it is. It's finally arrived. So on that note, though, let's dig into today and talk about our guest. So let's go back to our page here, this page, and I'm going to give Charles the luxury of talking about our guest today, Steve Dasbach.
Thanks, Jeff, and welcome, Steve.
Glad to be here.
I'll do a little intro here. And we're happy to have you, Steve. So many of us in the Freedom Hub are libertarians. We cover a lot of issues, and I met Steve probably around 2002-ish or 3-ish when he was helping the Ed Thompson campaign. And I think back then Steve was a staffer with the Libertarian National Committee Party headquarters. And then when I got involved with Gary Johnson over his 2 races, I guess Steve had returned a bit to his science teaching career in Northern Virginia. And that's close to my heart, because I also, before I got involved with Gary Johnson, I had left lobbying to try my hand at teaching in DC schools. That was an adventure. But with Jorgensen's elevation as the LP candidate this go around, Steve is her spokesman. And those of us who followed the campaign for that nomination, it was interesting to see Jo rise to the top, because she wasn't the top person, I think Steve will discuss when he starts, at first. I think a lot of us were looking at Bumper Hornberger. You know, we had him speak a year ago or so on the value of the 19th century in terms of politics that we can learn from. We had Adam Kokesh speak. People were looking at other high-profile candidates like Judge Gray, a past speaker on a webinar. And we learned that Jorgensen was, in fact, an LP candidate already for Harry Brown a long time ago. And that kind of gave her a lot of gravitas and credibility because she already had been a national nominee on the ticket with Harry Brown, one of our favorite candidates ever. So now with the Biden-Trump debates turning off people, Jorgensen has a sudden bump of interest. You know, should we try to get her in the next debate, October 19th? If so, how can we do it? Is it a wasted vote? Or really, long-term, is the wasted vote voting for someone in whom you don't believe? You know, we all know the story from 2016 with Trump and Hillary. It really was a negative vote. It was a vote against Hillary or a vote against Trump. Not so many folks were voting for either. And it might be the same this go around. And so we want to ask those tough questions. Can we, if we hate Biden so much, can we risk a Jorgensen vote? If we hate Trump so much, can we risk a Jorgensen vote? Or is it more of a risk to keep voting for the two parties that give us the same old every year, taxes, spending, etc.? So with that, I'll turn it over, Jeff, to Steve.
Okay, very good. Thank you so much. That was great. All right, Steve, I'm going to switch it over to your situation.
Great. And I'll pull some slides up in just a minute when we talk about the debate. But yeah, a lot of people were surprised when Joe rose up and won the nomination. I wasn't, because you know, I've been around the party for about 40 years. And the thing that has been clear to me is that to win a presidential nomination, you have to be able to unite the party. You have to be able to reach everyone. And that was what we set out to begin, to make sure that we had a message that would be something that the entire party could unite behind, a candidate who the party could unite behind, and that message would play into the general election. That is, that we wouldn't have to, you know, tack to the center or anything like that, that we could bring a strong pro-freedom message into the general election without compromising, by focusing on what, you know, how liberty works and how liberty really gives us better solutions than what the Democrats and Republicans are having. You've identified the key problem at this point, which is the wasted vote issue. And in fact, it is just amazing looking in social media, the level of vote shaming and that is going on between supporters of Biden and Trump about how, you know, a vote for Jorgensen is a vote for Donald Trump, or the Biden say, no, a vote for Jorgensen is a vote for Biden. And we're going, hey, that we get 3 votes. I mean, if I vote for Jorgensen, I get a vote for Trump, a vote for Biden, and a vote for Jorgensen. You know, what more could you ask for? My vote counts 3 times. I mean, the whole argument, of course, is silly. I can speak only for myself. There is no chance that I would vote for either Trump or Biden if Joe Jorgensen were not on the ballot, because, you know, if you look at the issues that are important to me, one of them is the debt. We are piling up huge amounts of debt, and that has occurred under Democrats. It's occurred under Republicans. It's occurred under Trump, and it's clear from Biden and the Democrats complaining that the spending hasn't gone up enough. So if you care about fiscal responsibility and your children and your grandchildren, Trump versus Biden is no choice. There's no option there. Or we look at what's happening in our cities across the nation, where we have the unrest because of police overreaction, people of color being shot in situations that clearly don't warrant it. And, you know, where's the choice there? This is occurring under the Trump administration, and he's saying we need to make the penalties tougher. Most of this is occurring in democratically controlled cities, and Biden was the architect of many of the laws that have led to this over-policing in the first place, starting with the 1994 crime bill. And Kamala Harris, his VP nominee, was a key prosecutor at putting people in jail for this, and was also one of the people that fought using DNA evidence to exonerate people that were serving sentences. So if you care about criminal justice reform, there's no option there. Or you look at what's happening overseas with our constant involvement of foreign wars. And Trump said he was going to bring the troops home. He finally brought a few home at the end, but mostly he just moved them out of one spot and over to another one. And Biden was a supporter of all this intervention when he was vice president. And you've seen a lot of the Republican hawks who don't like Trump move over to supporting Biden. So the wars aren't going to end if no matter which one of them we support. And so what you really see in the difference between Trump and Biden is a matter of how they present themselves, their tone. But in terms of substance, on many of the issues that matter, one is just as bad as the other. And so we find that there's a huge number of people out in the electorate who can't stand either candidate, think they're both terrible, but they're dealing with, they're in this drumbeat from the media. There are only two choices. There's only two choices. You have to pick one or the other. There are no other options. We got Michelle Obama coming on and saying that it's too important for us to play around with candidates who can't win and everything else. I mean, they're pulling out the big guns to try to prevent people from voting in their own interest. Because let's face it, when somebody says that you can't vote for the candidate you want, you have to support my candidate because my candidate's better than the other Democrat or Republican, what they're saying is they don't care about you. They don't care about your issues. They don't care about the things that matter to you. They only care about themselves. And they want your vote to promote their interests. They don't want you to vote in the way that votes your interest. So with that, I will pull up, do the screen share, because they did have a debate last Tuesday, and things got kind of crazy. Our website exploded. Our Facebook exploded. There was a tremendous interest as people looked at the Democrat and Republican choices and sort of did a collective blah and went looking for the other alternatives. And we saw just an explosion for Joe. So let me see if I can pull those up for you. Let's see. So I think I want to start with, yes, the debate analysis. So let me get this out of the way. So here's what happened on debate night. You can see that we had just a huge explosion in traffic, and the graph is worth 1,000 words, but you can see how it kind of shoots up there, where people were really looking for alternatives, and they were staying. They spent several minutes on. Typical user would spend a couple minutes checking out Joe, checking out the interest. We also got a big surge on new contacts and a big surge in donations. And you'll notice most of this was coming from organic search. It was just people looking for doing this in the search engine, followed by coming from social media and the postings that were occurring there. And that's one of the things that we've really had to rely upon in this campaign. We knew from the beginning that the media was going to frame this issue as Biden versus Trump, because they believe that's the only way Biden can win. They have to basically point, Trump is horrible, Trump's an orange man bad, and Biden is your only option. So no matter how bad you think Biden is, he's the only choice if you want to get rid of Trump. And that's the narrative that's coming through the media. You notice with this surge of interest, so you have people calling the debate, news anchors calling the debate a dumpster fire and a shit show on the air. You've got this surge of people looking for Joe Jorgensen. You'd think that there might be some interest among the media to who is this candidate that people are looking for. The voters say they want an alternative. Who are the alternative? Nothing. Crickets, because it doesn't fit their narrative. And I think that's something people need to understand is the biggest source of election tampering and vote tampering in this election is the media only presenting two candidates to the voters, despite the fact that there is a third candidate on the ballot in every state. And there's even a couple others that are in enough states that they could theoretically win the election. And all of that is being ignored because it doesn't fit the media narrative. And of course, the media wants to focus on the two candidates who are spending tens of millions of dollars on advertising, which benefits their network. So this really is, you know, incestuous, and that's why we are putting so much emphasis on social media and on purchased advertising, so that we can bypass the media blockade. You can see that this came across the board. It was in all of our various platforms. People were definitely looking for Joe Jorgensen. We saw the other candidates, the other third-party candidates did not see a surge like this. This was unique to George Jorgensen. And we were seeing it across the entire country. It was not targeted in any one particular area. So again, huge increase in interest. The other thing I would, you know, here's again something that I mentioned earlier, that after you watch the debate, 32% of people said it made them more likely to vote for Biden, 11% Trump, 57% neither. People did not like what they saw, and that's why they were looking for alternatives. And so that's really our challenge over the next month, is letting people know there is an alternative and countering the vote shaming, the frankly hysterical links that we're seeing people go to try to convince people to not vote for Joe Jorgensen, but instead vote for one of the steaming piles of turd, you know, whatever, that are being offered to them. So I think I probably talked long enough in one one long stretch.
In one long shot there. That was good. Yeah, you know, that, you know, it's interesting. You've been on the scene a very long time, as you were describing, and, you know, they're always, in terms of wasted vote and all the rest of the stuff, and kind of which is true, and I've said to many a person, I said, look, this isn't a horse race where you're trying to pick the winner. You're supposed to pick what you want to have happen. So,
and frankly, if you look at most states, by the time election day rolls around, one candidate or the other has a 5-point lead or more. So even if you're concerned, want to somehow pick the winner, in most states it's not. You're not going to. There's already enough of a lead one side or the other. That's not, and so you may as well vote for what you truly want. And you never know. You never know when things will align. In Indy, I was originally from Indiana before I went to Washington to serve as the party's executive director, and we had spent years there, running candidates every time, getting people in debates, showing a reasonable alternative. And this time around, all of a sudden we have a poll pops up that has the Republican incumbent at 36%, the Democratic challenger at 30%, and the Libertarian challenger at 24%. And all of a sudden it's an actual true three-way race where the Libertarian has a real shot to win. And they didn't see that coming. It was simply that the effort had been put in over time to establish the Libertarian Party as a clear, credible alternative, and you got the right combination of dissatisfaction with the choices that Democrats or Republicans were offering, and a good, strong Libertarian candidate, and confidence among the voters that they could support that Libertarian alternative, and things weren't going to go crazy. But again, it helps there that, for example, in Indiana, Libertarians have been on the debate stage for, I think, at least a decade, probably more than that. And so, which is something the Democrats and Republicans have worked very hard to prevent happening nationally.
Well, they know that's going to be a problem. And for those that are not in the know, I mean, the party suffered for many years just trying to be on the ballot. Where everybody else got to go out and campaign, the party had to just try to be on the ballot. So hitting that 50-state ballot status of multiple cycles now is really beginning that establishment, like you said.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing is, you notice that because we have learned how to do this and know how to to accomplish the 50 state drives, we didn't have happen to us what happened to the Greens. This time around, the Democrats made a concerted effort to kick the Greens off the ballot in a number of states. And the Republicans tried the same thing to us in one state, I think it was Texas, and failed. Because again, we know how to make sure that our petition drives are bulletproof so that they can't pull that stuff. But they are really pulling out all the stops to try to prevent there from being any competition, because people are getting disgusted with both choices, and they know the only way they can get people to vote for, the only way the Republicans can get people to vote for Trump, a lot of people to vote for Trump, is to demonize Biden and the Democrats. The only way the Democrats can get people to vote for Biden is to demonize Trump and the Republicans. It's all about how bad they both are, and we agree they're both bad. Perhaps we should try voting for a functional adult rather than these children engaged in shouting matches with each other.
Excellent. Charles, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, I have a number of questions. The first, I changed my mind. I wish to ask first because you just mentioned a poll, Steve. They had the Libertarian in third place, but it's striking distance of Trump and Biden for the victory. 24%.
Oh, no, that's right. That was the Indiana governor's race. So that is Holcomb, who's the Republican, Myers, who is the Democrat, and Rainwater, who is the Libertarian, who is definitely within striking distance of winning there. The biggest hurdle they have to overcome is Indiana is one of the, I think, 6 states that still have straight ticket voting. So they have to do a lot of educating of Democrats and Republicans that if they want to vote for Rainwater for governor, they have to not choose their normal straight ticket and vote individually for the candidates, which for many of them is going to be a unique experience.
What is Joe polling at? Has that changed since the debate?
It's ranged. We've had the ABC Washington Post poll had her at 5%, as did the Marist NPR PBS poll. Those are 2 of the 5 polls that count for the debate that the debate commission uses. The other 3 didn't bother to include her, which is kind of interesting. You're supposed to get a certain percentage in polls that don't include your name. So that's an interesting challenge. And other polls have different. I mean, we got a range. I'd say that right now the consensus seems to be in the 2-3% range, which is 3% is what Gary Johnson ended up with on election day. The big difference we're seeing this time, we're starting much lower than Gary Johnson started, but our trajectory has been up. Gary's campaign hit a peak on 9/11 4 years ago, and then kind of fell from that point once it became clear he was not going to be included in the debates. We've made it clear from the beginning that we understand that how the game is rigged. We understand that this is we have a cartel between the mainstream media and the Democrats and Republicans that is designed to make sure that nobody gets on that debate stage other than the Democrat and Republican. And a libertarian will get up there, basically we'll have to fight and kick and claw to get up there over all these barriers, just as we have mastering the 50 states. So, we have to pound at this the same way we did on 50 state ballot access. We have to work around the media to reach people directly. And that's what our campaign is focused on. And we want to make sure that wherever we end up on election day, that we have a larger and stronger identified libertarian base than we had at the start of the election, so that the next set of candidates can build from there. So we'll get more Don Rainwaters who are able to go into races and be competitive.
What about that debate commission, which suppresses competition in an illegal way? I mean, our American Initiative, we had that lawsuit with Bruce Fine as the attorney trying to get up to the Supreme Court, and ultimately it was dismissed and it failed.
Yeah, and there was there was a similar one, I believe, this year, unless that was the same one. But I know there was one suit that finally made it this year and was turned down. The Democrats and Republicans look after each other.
Yeah, that was tough. Final question, Jeff. A lot of health freedom activists, like myself, have seen a huge grassroots movement in the 50 states against medical mandates. All these women, mostly, who were not political, and the assault on their choices have come from Democrats, and Republicans have usually been on the right side with choice on medical mandates, mainly from vaccines. Some libertarians in my health freedom camp have left the LP because the LP wasn't very strong during the COVID alarmism in condemning some of these heavy-handed tactics. And now we have polls showing 80% of Americans are wary of the COVID vaccine, which presents, I would think, the LP a great opportunity to emphasize that all medical intervention should be voluntary and based on consent.
That is in fact been Joe's position from the very beginning. We've come out with that repeatedly. That and in the health area, so whether you take a vaccine or don't take a vaccine, all these things should be your choice. But it also applies to the economic area of COVID. That is, do you decide to does your business stay open or closed? Do you require masks or not require? These should all be decisions that are made by individuals, taking the science into account as best they determine. It should not be mandated by the government. That's frankly the reason why that's been the big issue for Donald Rainwater in Indiana, is because the Republican governor there has been doing a mask mandate and other types of mandates, and the Democrats are supportive of that as well. So Don Rainwater, the Libertarian, has been the only person out there speaking about people's freedom to be able to make their own choices, whether it's in terms of whether they take a vaccine, whether their business chooses to require a mask or not, whether you choose to wear one or not, and again, respecting the rights of those businesses to make those choices. So, we've been probably the strongest on these areas, and it certainly has been an area that Joe has spoken out on repeatedly, that these are individual choices that need to be made. Government, not only do they not have the right to make these choices, but they have a terrible track record. Remember the food pyramid, where they were going to tell us how we should eat, and then it turned out that the food pyramid was making us fat. So government does not have a very good track record of making these decisions for us. In the COVID situation, the FDA limited only one test that could be manufactured to be used. All these other companies that had tests were told no, they weren't allowed to be used, and then it turned out the government test didn't work. So that set us back at least a month or two in testing, which could have had a huge impact on the spread of the virus. And again, that was government telling you couldn't do something that private businesses were ready to go forward with, were ready to make these tests available. Some of them were even producing the tests and providing them overseas. They just couldn't provide them here because of the FDA.
Final question, Jeff, and I might see if Ed Kless wants to say something about the business community that he interviews in his show about business disruption. Where are their politics on this? But before, Ed, if you want to say something, Steve, my final question is another weakness or opportunity Joe has is with the riots. I know she's been supportive of inclusion, which is good spiritually, and maybe the right thing to do with oppressed minorities. But a lot of people losing their businesses in the lockdown or through the riots have seen Trump be a bit more forceful on that issue. So I'm just talking about wedge issues where the LP should be capturing voters, and Trump, of course, is trying to use these wedge issues for his own purposes too, maybe even Biden to a certain extent. But so BLM and the riots as an opportunity for the LP.
Well, I think that really points out the whole point about think about what is it that the police are supposed to do. They're supposed to protect your life and property. Therefore, they should be standing up against riots. They should be protecting property. They should not be hassling peaceful protesters. And what you end up having is they were putting a lot of their effort into standing up against the people who were peaceful. And then when the rioting started, they backed away, or in some cases, in the case of Portland, they were ordered away by the mayor. That's a complete reversal about what most individuals say that you should be looking for the police. The police should be acting to protect life and property, period. That's their job. And we've been seeing that. So Joe has been saying from day one, absolute support for people peacefully protesting. Some of the police overreaction, particularly dealing with these victimless crimes, but that strong action should be taken to protect life and property, and that includes the right of individuals to defend themselves. One of the real weaknesses that we've seen on the part of the Trump administration is some backpedaling on support for people's right to keep and bear arms. And certainly we're not going to see any support for that on the Democratic side. So the Libertarians really are now to the point where they're pretty much, we're the ones that are standing up for people's right to defend themselves and their families and their property. They're really getting nothing more than lip service for the Republicans, and not even that from the Democrats.
Very good. Ed, I see your hand is up.
Yep. Hi, Steve.
Hi, Ed.
So you can see right there, there's my bumper sticker. So,
all right.
Good to go. And yes, it was Texas that was where they tried to knock us off. I am one of those candidates that they tried to knock off the ballot.
Yes.
So yeah, there was definitely Texas. The other thing, I had the privilege of introducing Joe at the event here in Allen, Texas, when the bus tour swung through. So pretty proud of that. Two questions for you. One, are you seeing any different in the demographic regarding who is attracted to Joe from who is attracted to Gary Johnson? And then the second question, I'll let you address both of them, is Maine for the first time has ranked choice voting, which I think is one of the keys really ultimately to breaking the duopoly. Right. And what's the campaign doing with regard to paying attention to the vote in Maine?
Well, we just got done, Joe just got done doing a swing through Maine, and we'll probably do one more before the election's over. We're doing an effort to use texting to reach out to the primary demographic, which has been supportive of Joe, which is independents under the age of 45. And so that's where we've been focusing on. And we're talking about, for example, at one poll where we had where we got the demographic information, had her at 9% among independents and 10% among those who are under 45. You put those two factors together, and it ends up being close to 20% if you're among the people that identify as independents and who are under 45. And so that's where we're putting our major focus, both because it's where there's the greatest support, and also we're thinking of the future, because those people will be, if we can get a foothold among younger voters and keep that going while they get older, then that will gradually increase our overall support among the population. In terms of beyond that, those are the two big factors: is age and political affiliation. You look, we get very little support from people who identify themselves as Democrats or Republicans. The bulk of it comes from people who identify as independents. The other interesting thing, we only have this for volunteers, but I can speculate a little bit with regard to donors and contacts. But when people fill out our volunteer form, one of the things we ask them is, are they members of the Libertarian Party? And 75% of the people volunteering to help on Joe's campaign, the answer is no. They are not currently members of the Libertarian Party, but they've been brought in by Joe and her campaign and are volunteering. Among the contacts, we know it's more than that. It's more than 75%. And donors, at least half of the donors are people that have not been involved in the Libertarian Party before. So, we are seeing a lot of growth from what we've had in the past. And I think the big difference, I'm not sure that there's a huge demographic difference between this year and for Gary's campaign. That is, when I look back at the polls there, it was also strongest among independents and stronger among younger voters. The big difference is we're making a really concerted effort to identify those people and establish a connection with them that will go past Election Day. And that is, I think, the big difference between what we're doing versus what not just Gary Johnson, but previous campaigns have done. Their focus has been primarily on the vote for Election Day and not thinking about what was going to happen afterwards.
Yeah, I can just bear that out. We're seeing the same thing with regard to people who are attracted to the Collin County Facebook page here in North Texas. So it seems to be actually a greater, that same demographic, but even greater number than we saw in 2016, which is great. So anyway, look forward to maybe seeing you at the watch party.
Yeah, well, definitely. And I should point out, I think we're getting a lot more volunteers than they had in the Johnson campaign. From talking to people who were involved in that campaign, their sense is that we're getting more grassroots activism and more grassroots volunteers. Obviously, the Johnson campaign had the benefit of having two former governors, and one of whom, Governor Weld, was a fundraising machine. He would apparently sit there for hours upon hours calling through his Rolodex and raising money. So got to give him credit for that. So we're doing this. Ours is very much grassroots, small donor, and reaching out to people that have not been involved in the Libertarian Party or politics in that matter before. But they see what's happening in our country and they want to do something about it.
One thing.
Last question. I'm sorry. Before just if you could just say a few words about the vice presidential nominee, Spike Cohen. I know he will not be endorsing another candidate. That I can tell you that.
Yes. Yeah. So Spike's been great. He's been out. I mean, he's our first millennial who's been on a ticket. I don't think there's any other ticket that's had somebody in the millennial generation. He's the first. It's interesting. He's exactly about 1 year younger this time around than Joe was when she ran as VP with Harry Brown. She was 39 and he's 38. So interesting parallel there. But no, he's been great. He's been out campaigning. He's on the bus right now, heading. I think he's in Delaware, heading down through Virginia and into North Carolina. He'll be swinging by, but not stopping in Greenville here in a few days. So I may connect up with him as they go through. But yeah, he's been especially effective at going into some of the marginalized communities, making connections with people that are involved in some of the Black Lives Matter protests, and being able to make that connection in terms of how government actions harm people and why you really can't look to government to try to make things better, the government programs to make things better, because those politicians are out to promote themselves, not you, and they are in fact the cause of the problems. So he's been, I think, very effective at connecting with that.
Very good. One thing you didn't finish addressing on part of Ed's question was about the rank voting in Maine, and a lot of people don't even know what that is.
Ranked choice voting means it means that you, instead of just picking one person to vote for, you make your first choice, your second choice, your third choice, and then after you look at all the first choice votes, if nobody has a majority, then the person with the lowest total then moves to their second choice vote, and you continue that process until somebody has the majority of support. And Maine is the first state that's going to use that in the presidential election. So yes, Jo Jorgensen was up there doing a campaign swing. She'll probably be back there one more time. We're doing texting into that area. We'll probably do some targeted ads. So yes, we are making an effort to try to get people to make whether their lesser of evils pick is Trump or Biden, to choose Joe as their first choice, in the knowledge that if Joe doesn't win the state, then their vote will go to their second choice, which brings them back to where they would have been if they'd made the lesser of evils choice. So and I'm sure that the Democrats and Republicans are going to do everything they possibly can to obscure that and try to get people to vote like they normally would vote and not take advantage of that. They tried to block it in the courts and failed. And so now I'm expecting a pretty solid, strong disinformation campaign to try to confuse people.
Well, I would say, considering they're trying to block it and whatnot, it must be actually a pretty good solution to the conundrum.
Right. I mean, yeah, because it means that people can actually, decide who's my first choice, who's my second, who's my third, and without worrying about that they're somehow going to inadvertently elect the person they like least by voting for the person they like the most. And the ranked choice voting eliminates that particular concern, that particular argument that's used to dissuade people from voting for people other than the Democrats or Republicans.
David, I see you've got your hand up.
Steve, in addition to the awesome bus tours, how are you using cost-effective alternative TV media and third-party debates to connect with independents, disillusioned voters, and eligible but apathetic potential voters?
Well, a couple things. We are definitely utilizing social media. In terms of television, we've been using the streaming TV ads, the ones that go on the streaming services, so that we can target voters. So we can target to independents, we can target to the younger age brackets, we can target to individual states. So we've done some ads that were targeted in the places where the bus tour is going to go. We would do some Facebook and sometimes some streaming TV ads in that area so that those things would reinforce each other. It's interesting with the bus tour, we've been finding, we get pretty good results, pretty good coverage from local media, but the complete crickets from the national media. And so it's interesting to notice the extent to which at the local level you still see actual journalism, whereas nationally it's almost all advocacy. Sometimes under a veneer of objectivity, but you can pretty much tell right away which side any given national media outlet is pulling for and a slant to their coverage.
Follow-on question, Steve, in a little different direction. In the 40 years that you've been with the Libertarian Party, how have you seen things change in how the party is run, and also in the nature of the top ticket candidates?
Well, I think that I'll take the top ticket candidate first, because we're trying. One of the things we're trying to show in this election is that you don't have to choose a former office holder from the Democratic or Republican Party in order to have a successful campaign. We want to be able to show that, I think we are very likely to exceed what Gary Johnson did in 2012. And I think we've got a realistic shot of being able to exceed his results from 2016. And whether we do or don't, it's going to be done with a lot less financial resources. We've run a campaign that's focused more on being able to marshal individuals and the other efforts rather than through money. So that's the key. That's been different. As far as the party, I think the big difference has been that, or the big thing you see is that hopefully we're seeing now the importance of people coming together. I think we've seen for this presidential campaign a greater sense of unity than I recall having seen in any campaign, maybe back till the '96 campaign with Harry Brown. But the party was pretty unified there. And I think that we're seeing that this time as well. In part, that's because between Joe Jorgensen and Spike Cohen, you pretty much almost everybody, all the delegates had voted for at least one of those two, and in some cases both. So I think we've seen a campaign that has really brought the party together, and hopefully we'll be able to continue that spirit going forward.
Well, I can tell you that I have already voted here in Nebraska and in the right direction.
Good. Yeah, I have to go through. I'm going to actually be out of town on the election day. I'll already be in Dallas, and so we have what's called in-person absentee voting. So that's what we're going to be going over sometime, presumably this week, and vote in person absentee, so that the votes will in fact get counted on election day and not 2 weeks later.
Interesting. Well, that's a great way to kind of conclude here. So it's pretty exciting. I see everything continues to congeal. Who knew it was going to take this many years, though, right?
Yep. Well, I mean, I figured it was going to take a long time. I'm not surprised. I was a little disheartened when in the early 2000s, where we kind of took a slid backwards, where people took their eye off the ball of trying to build our base and kind of went scattershot in a bunch of different directions, and we saw some of that growth evaporate. But now we've been on a growth trajectory now for the past, at least the last couple cycles. I think, especially you see registration numbers and membership numbers have been climbing from 2012 to 2016 to now, and we want to keep that continuing. One of the other things is this is the first campaign since I believe 2004 that hasn't been run by bringing in a bunch of hired guns from outside the party to run the campaign. The people that are involved in this campaign are all mostly big L libertarians and a few small L libertarians. But so we're coming out of this campaign with a pool of people who have national campaign experience, which is going to be a huge benefit to our congressional campaigns, our Senate campaigns, and the people that are going to pursue the nomination in 2024. They're going to have a pool of libertarians, experienced libertarians to pick from to be able to staff their campaigns.
Oh, that's a huge advantage. And opening up the ticket for a minute as we close it out, you know, what is going on Downticket? We're just spending all this time talking about Joe, and the advantage of voting for her is to keep this ballot access intact for a lot of states. So that's an attribute just besides trying to pick her as a best option, but to keep that third option alive out there, to keep the others feet to the fire. But how many candidates are we seeing Downticket? Has that been growing, and what kind of a reaction are they having?
That's kind of gone up and down. I'm actually not sure what the numbers are this year. I've been so focused on the presidential. I know we've got some great candidates running locally. We've got out in Wyoming, Bethany Blades, who came within a handful of votes of winning a seat in the legislature 2 years ago, is running again, and it looks like has a good shot of getting elected. We've got, I already talked about Donald Rainwater in Indiana. Of course, out in California, in Riverside, Jeff Hewitt has been on the Board of Supervisors there, which is a huge district, huge budget, bigger than many states in that one area. So we're getting some people that have some really significant offices, and also one of the people involved in Joe's campaign, one of our regional organizers, is Jim Turney, former national chair, but he's also elected city councilman down in Altamont Springs, Florida, just north of Orlando. So one of the other things I think was interesting, talked about the bringing the party together. we have working on Joe's campaign in one capacity or another, every one of the campaign managers for all but I think one of the campaign managers for the other candidates that were seeking the presidential nomination.
That's a pretty good testament. That is
we really have worked to try to make sure that this is a party-wide effort and not one faction promoting themselves and pushing aside others.
Certainly. Ed, I see you got a good last comment here.
Yeah, just to let you know, on the local down ballot, we did see a downturn in Texas because of the law that they put in, which was a filing fee, which is quickly hysterical because the filing fee was used to fund the primaries, which libertarians don't use.
Now, is that one of the states where the filing fee comes back to the party?
Yes, but it didn't come back to us. It was.
That's interesting.
Yeah. That was the problem. Turns out that's kind of illegal. Yeah. So anyway, but unfortunately, that we are down in terms of the number of candidates that we're fielding in Texas. Hopefully, that will get reversed the next cycle because of the lawsuits that have been filed and changed. So, but
yeah, and of course, the other thing we have to fight with is out on the West Coast. We have both California and Washington State that have these top two primaries. So most of the Libertarian candidates get eliminated in the primary. And so they don't make it to election day, to the general election. And the thing that's really, the thing that is really not obvious from that is if you're a Libertarian and you are out in California, you're essentially having to get yourself to go vote just for president because the Libertarian candidates were generally eliminated in the top two primary. And so you don't have those other candidates to vote. You had them to vote for in the primary, but you don't have them to vote for on the general election. And that is something that, I would certainly suspect depresses turnout among anybody that's not a Democrat or Republican, as it probably depresses turnout from Republicans in Democratic areas where they have two Democrats on the ballot and Democrats in Republican areas where they've got two Republicans on the ballot. So that if your state starts to talk about top two primaries, do everything you can to defeat it because it's really, really bad.
Looks like we've still got our work cut out for us. Well, Stephen, I appreciate being here today, and we're going to soon see how things shake out.